Alright guys, so this video is going to be taking a look at some basic laboratory equipment as well as lab safety. So let's go ahead and just go straight into some basic equipment, right? We have our digital scale. Now we also have the manual triple beam balances, right? Those are used for measuring mass, which is critical later on when we start our stoichiometry unit. Right, you need to always measure out the proper amount of substance, right, for the experiment, but also to minimize costs, because chemicals are not cheap in most cases. We have a ring stand, right, which is used to hold or to clamp glassware, so you don't break anything or so nothing falls, just to keep your experiment good and safe. You have a beaker here. You can see what it's used for. Students love this. This is a scoopula, and yes, that really is the official name. You use it to transfer solid chemicals. You have tongs used to pick up hot beakers. The striker, right, used to light up a Bunsen burner here. Bunsen burners are used to heat up test tubes or anything like that. We don't use them very much in class because I don't trust, well, high school kids with fire, but I'll occasionally use one as a demonstration, right? We have a glass stirring rod. Now a burette is just another piece of glassware, kind of like a flask or a beaker, except it's extremely accurate. It's very accurate for dispensing liquids or even for measuring certain amounts of liquids. And we use those predominantly for acid-base titrations, which you'll see in second semester. We're all familiar with the test tube here, right? Very small. They do come in different sizes though. They are used to mix liquids, but also they're used to hold different chemicals, which we'll do quite a bit. The clay triangle is used oftentimes with the ring stand. You can put a clamp on the ring stand and then a clay triangle on top of that to hold certain pieces of glassware, or even for heating, or to support it during heating. Of course, you got your test tube holders, right, to move them around. Your crucible. These are cool little, normally porcelain little things that are used to heat to high temperatures and sometimes to store so water or different things won't get inside to contaminate. Test tube racks, common sense. You've got let's see, a thermometer, right? We have some digital thermometers, but just a classic thermometer is great for basic experiments, right? I mean, digital thermometers are great, but A, they're expensive, and B, it doesn't hurt you to be able to use some more old school equipment. Now, we've talked about a beaker, but you also have a flask. These are called Erlenmeyer flasks, and they're used to hold and to mix chemicals. And the neck is the shape it is to allow you to swirl without the chemical just splashing out like a beaker. You have your clamp that goes on the ring stand, an evaporating dish. Again, just another apparatus for heating. Another type of glassware, the volumetric flask. Now, these are extremely accurate pieces of glassware. Well, at least more accurate compared to the beaker or the flask. They're used to prepare solutions. They're very nice to use for cereal dilutions, which we'll talk about in second semester. They're just more accurate, more expensive pieces of glassware. Excuse me. Let's see what else we have here. We won't use pipettes very much, but a little bit. Funnels are common sense. Wash bottles are used to wash or to rinse glassware or to add water if needed, which is occasionally required. Your graduated cylinder, you're very used to seeing these. They're used to measure precise volumes of liquid. Burettes are really better, but graduated cylinders are just very cheap and very common. You have your watch glass. We use these quite a bit, a lot in fact. They're used to hold solids or to weigh chemicals. Now, I also use them for other things like to cover a container or to cover something that you're not using or that you will use later on. They're very handy for multiple purposes. Your classic mortar and pestle. This is an ancient piece of lab equipment. It's used to crush and to grind Chemicals, oftentimes you'll have different solids that you have to grind in order to get them to dissolve in water better, for example. Wire gauze usually goes on a ring stand. It's also good for heating as well as the ring clamp. So there are a million different pieces of lab equipment to learn about. Now we're just going to move over to some basic lab safety as well as other ideas, right? So general lab safety rules. Now I have a set of those on my syllabus, but it's just very critical that you understand some basic lab safety rules. So students should behave in mature and responsible manners at all times. You're always to follow instructions. You're never to inappropriately roam around or mess with chemicals in a way that you know you shouldn't. That includes smelling chemicals. There's a proper way to do it. You don't just stick it up to your nose. Always ask your teacher for help. You never eat or drink or even chew gum in the lab, right? You could contaminate with chemicals. You always wash your hands thoroughly. You always put on proper lab safety equipment also. Gloves, goggles, and aprons. And I will supply all of those for you. You can only perform experiments authorized by me. You can't do other things on the side. You must properly dispose of all chemical waste. I have containers for that, and they'll be marked, and you'll be instructed at the beginning of every lab that we do. You may never wear lab safety equipment outside of the classroom, and you may never enter the storage closet. That's only for me. Anytime there's an incident, spillage, breakage, right, you gotta let me know. Don't try to clean something up on your own. That is my job. I don't care, if you break a beaker, don't try to clean up the glass. That is my job, right? You can't remove anything from the lab, and you must examine all equipment before and after. You don't want to try to heat up a broken beaker, right? Now I try to check that, but it's easily missed between between periods. Now, some basic things too. You need to tie back long hair. You don't need to wear shorts during lab. I prefer you to wear long sleeves. You can't wear open-toed shoes like Crocs. And there are quite a few other rules. Right, students must never reach over an exposed flame or hot plate. Students must never point a test tube or any type of vessel at somebody else. A lot of these are common sense, but I've seen them all broken before in the past, and so I've got other lab safety things that we'll talk about in class, and there's a quiz that you'll have to take. But it is very, very important that you follow these guidelines. Now, I got my PowerPoint here. Usually I mark it up and all that, but just, don't smell, touch, taste chemicals. Don't horseplay. Don't disregard my rules. Don't roam around visiting other groups. That's a recipe for disaster. Violation of these rules will have severe consequences. And finally, here in my room, you can see my eye wash station, my chemical burn station, my shower, that is, first aid equipment right here, and my fire blanket, right, which I'll show you when we get into class. Now, this is just a very brief explanation of lab safety. There's a whole lot more to talk about, but that's just a very good basis for the internet.